Okay, we're going to get started, guys and gals, because we do have a packed agenda, and we promise we're going to pack it to as little time as we can. Before we get started, I just want to thank our sponsors again, and Momentum Cyber and Evolution, as well as Shasta, have all partnered with Wild Ventures to throw this amazing event together. All right, Dino, I think it's quite enough. Let's get started, man.
Thank you guys again. It's great to be back in front of you. A lot of familiar faces in the room. Obviously, thank you to YL and their team for putting on these amazing events, and really great to chat with you guys here. So we're gonna get into a little bit of fun, but real quick, I think most of you are familiar with Momentum Cyber. 100% cybersecurity focused advisory firm. We work with clients, everything from seed, Series A, all the way up through large global telcos, the big four, really on the sell side, buy side, kind of all things strategic. We're based in San Francisco. We have clients kind of across the globe, North America, Europe, Middle East, of course, clients here in wonderful Israel, Asia Pacific. So this is a snapshot of who we are in case you were wondering. So before we jump into M&A and VC and private equity statistics, just want to flash up a couple previews of our mid-year report that we're going to be putting out here in a couple weeks. So some interesting studies that we wanted to highlight for you guys today. One of them from our friends at Accenture and Ponemon, really looking at all the work that all the people in this room are doing, what's the effect that we're actually having? And if you look at some of the statistics as far as average number of breaches per organization, the average cost of a breach in an organization, we're seeing continued over the last 5 years over 70% growth, both in the number of breaches these are successful attacks, not just the number of attacks. So the problem continues to get more and more pervasive. We're looking at the average cost of breaches of cybercrime per company, talking about 13 million on average, which I realize when you look at certain industries like healthcare, looking at utilities, that might get skewed upwards. There are different geos will get skewed upwards. United States, of course, you know, the cost of a breach here we're seeing is getting higher and higher. And it's interesting to contrast the damage that is done versus the attacker's economy. So when you look at the attack ecosystem and you look at what does it cost to actually carry out some of these attacks, our friends at Microsoft did a study, and you look at the cost of executing a DDoS attack for a day, we're talking $100 per day or $300 per week. You look at what does it cost to get compromised credentials, this one is really interesting. $150, as low as $150 for a batch of 400 million compromised credentials. On average, we're seeing less than $1 per 1,000 credentials for attackers. Ransomware, there's even innovation happening on the business model for the attackers. There's affiliate models where you do profit sharing from the folks that supply you with the capabilities to execute these attacks. I mean, we're seeing an economy that makes it easier and cheaper and much more effective for the attackers to attack and do significant damage at organizations. Now, what is this leading to? Well, here, this for one example. We joke around, everyone says it's an eye chart. This is actually only a quarter of the companies that we have at Momentum in our database that we track. And the map is getting bigger and bigger. We're running out of space on the page. Next year, I asked Yoav to get a larger screen so we can project it, but this is just a fraction of what we're seeing in the space. Now, quickly touching on some of the strategic activity we've been seeing year to date. Some of these themes will sound pretty familiar because the trends continue to go up and to the right. I think most notable is between M&A and total PE venture capital investments this year, we're pushing almost $12 billion that are already spent. Last year in all of 2018, that figure was about 22 billion. So we're on track to outpace even 2018's numbers, which is pretty impressive. A lot of that you can see on the left, private equity continues to have its love affair with cybersecurity. Everything from, take privates to roll-ups. We saw MSSP transactions, a PE firm called Sunstone, rolled up Terra Verde, Sword and Shield, True Shield. We're seeing much more activity happening on the private equity front. So it's no longer the usual suspects of strategics that you're going to exit to. It's PE is a real viable exit outcome for folks. We saw record high attendees at RSA. For those of you that were there, 45,000 people attended RSA. astonishing. I think last year that figure was somewhere in the 30,000s, and we thought there's no way this could possibly become a bigger event. We were proven wrong. Once again, 45,000 attendees. We see some of the dominating forces in cybersecurity M&A, Palo Alto. We have a speaker coming up next that can speak to what it's like to be a talented entrepreneur and get locked in the sights of Palo Alto and having a great outcome. But they continue to spend over $1 billion. One company alone has spent this year to date. So hopefully that continues for the benefit of everyone in this room. So these are just some of the statistics. Again, this is a preview of the report that we'll be putting out here in a couple weeks. So be sure to either touch base with me or check out our website if you want to actually see this in more depth. Real quick, touching back on the private equity point, I think this is a slide you guys are familiar with. We saw even more activity. We saw Recorded Future get taken out at strategic multiples and almost $1 billion type outcome. We're seeing roll-ups as a space that, as I mentioned. And I think what's most telling is if you look at what was private equity like back in 2007, 4% by deal count, 4% of the deals were private equity deals, and only 11% of the money that flowed in to M&A activity back in 2007 came from private equity. If you look at that today, almost a quarter of the deals that we're seeing today in M&A are PE buyers, and almost 50% of the capital that's flowing into the M&A arena is coming from private equity. So it's not just a buyer of last resort. These are strategic players building platforms, paying strategic prices for their assets. The public company universe also is expanding. If you look at, a little less than 10 years ago, we had 12 public security companies, market cap a little less than 50 billion. You look at what's happening today, 33 public security companies, market cap over $200 billion, and this number keeps growing and going up and to the right. I'm sure you guys all saw the high-flying CrowdStrike IPO. We expect to see more IPOs this year. We saw 5 last year. We've had 2 so far this year, and there's more in the pipeline, and it seems like there's more to come even in 2019. So last but not least, a couple points about what's hot and why. A lot of you are seeing this firsthand, but what we're seeing on our side, risk and compliance is one area that's getting a ton of visibility, a ton of dollars that are flowing into the space. This is everything from an internal view and an internal risk of your organizations, the Kennas, the risk senses of the world. We're seeing more money flowing into, you probably saw the third-party risk management, you saw Security Scorecard raised another $50 million. More and more folks are building comprehensive risk management solutions. There's the cyber insurance players that are raising quite a bit of capital. Coalition raised another 40 million this year, all really getting down to how can you distill what the true risk of your organization really looks like, and how do you actually quantify that? So we expect everyone in that space of visibility, assessment, scoring, getting a comprehensive view of the risk of your organization. We continue to see activity in that space. I think security analytics, when you think about kind of the big moves that have been happening this year, Microsoft released Sentinel. We know from our information, we know they plan on that to be a multi-billion-dollar product in the next few years. We saw Google, or I should say Chronicle, releasing Backstory. If you saw the press release today, Amazon released their security hub to the GA. They actually don't call it a SIM, but a lot of the functionality is a SIM. And then you have kind of the next-gen players, the Jasks of the world, the Exabeams, and others that are coming out with the pure, cloud plays in this market. So we expect the SIM market, the analytics market, really kind of a cloud-first approach. We expect that to continue. And then last but not least, I think we touched on this with a number of MSSP deals. We continue to see the cybersecurity talent shortage play a part in driving activity, everything from orchestration, automation, analytics, anything that's really serving as a force multiplier, all the way up to and including outsourcing your security completely to MDR providers, MSSP providers. So this is just a snapshot of what we see in the activity. Yoav, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you guys, and thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Great, Dino. Thank you so much. Okay, so my name is Yoav Leitersdorf. I'm the managing partner of YL Ventures. YL Ventures invests at seed stage in Israeli cyber only. We don't do anything else. We invest multi-million-dollar seed rounds, typically with we partner up with some angel investors that we like investing with, and then for follow-on rounds, we talk to some of these folks, and we're very fortunate to have some great follow-on rounds and follow-on investors with us. That's about it. If you're starting a security company from scratch, please talk to one of our team members. Ofer is here somewhere. Ofer, where are you? Right there. The man with the beard, the middle, Ofer Schreiber. Go talk to him if you're starting a cybersecurity company. We'll start with introductions. I'll let each panelist introduce himself because they'll probably be best at it. Dave?
Can I use my own mic? Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? All right. Good evening. All right, my name's Dave DeWalt. Let's see, 68 quarters as a public company CEO. I ran 4 different companies and retired a couple of years ago from active CEO work, and now I have a platform called NightDragon, which is a investment and advisory platform, but I'm also involved with Momentum Cyber with Dino and some other partners, and I do a lot of investing and advising for the cybersecurity ecosystem, having a time of my life. Love watching this whole industry grow up right before our eyes, Yoav. It's amazing, and having a lot of fun. So.
Great. Ben?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Bernstein. You can probably hear my heartbeat because I'm really excited sitting next to Dave, really. When we started, they told me if you'll be successful, you'll be able to talk to him one day, so I'm actually happy that I can do that.
I'm rubbing against him. He's the good luck charm right here.
You should do it again. Never mind. I'm getting bold, but I'm representing all the founders or soon-to-be founders here in the crowd. Me and the other co-founder, Dima, started Twistlock about 4.5 years ago. Initially, we really wanted to change the world, and then we realized no one would give us money to do that, so we just said we'll make shitload of money and try and start with that. Luckily, we were able to get people to give us their money, and so we started from there. And today we have a pretty successful company called Twistlock. It's been in the press that we've been acquired by Palo Alto Networks, but I cannot talk at all about that because it's sort of a deal in the making and all that. But I'd love to share insights from being a founder.
Great. Is it on? Is it on? It's a tough act to follow, these two guys, but I'll give it a try. Karthik Subramanian from Evolution Equity Partners. We are a $300 million fund investing in predominantly cybersecurity companies in Europe, US, and Israel. I work out of the Palo Alto office. Prior to this, I led Cisco's acquisition and investments team, did a number of marquee deals while I was at Cisco. I love the Israeli community here. I try to come here to Israel at least once a year. And it's mind-boggling how much talent and how many awesome companies come out of Israel. So I look forward to getting to know a lot more of you this year and over the next several years.
Hi, I'm Renee Guttmann, and I'm the CISO for Campbell Soup Company. I am on the other side. I'm one of the people that you might call on and ask to write a check to actually pay for the product. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I graduated with a degree in archaeology and anthropology because there were no computer science degrees when I graduated. I went to RSA for the first time. There were 300 people there. Everybody was a mathematician, and there were 5 vendors. The showroom floor was less than this space here. So I've been an early stage adopter. I worked at companies like Coca-Cola, Capital One, Time Warner, Royal Caribbean, and now Campbell Soup. I was a Gartner analyst. I was Mandiant's 5th client. I made him drive me one time.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It was a good thing. I love Kevin. But anyway, so I love being an early stage adopter, pushing the envelope, and I'm happy to be here.
So Adam Ely, I'm the deputy CISO of Walmart. I sort of bridged the gap. Before Walmart, I founded a company that was acquired. Interestingly enough, Karthik would not buy it when he was at Cisco. So I have a bit of a little grudge there still. So now I spend my time running the enterprise at Walmart, working with VCs and working with startups.
Hi, I'm Mithun Chopra. I'm a partner at a venture firm called Shasta Ventures, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel, and thank you so much for having me. It's been investing in Israeli startups for a really long time, and as Karthik mentioned, just look at the amount of energy that there is in the room right now.
All right, so let's start with my favorite question, and it's my favorite question because Dave has my favorite answer. Last time I asked him on a panel a year ago, I said, what do you think are the hottest sectors in security right now? He basically went into a 3-minute monologue where he gave us all 8 or 9 or 10 themes of wisdom. Everybody was taking notes, and we had lots of follow-up after that. I don't think he has 8, 9, or 10 now because I'm limiting his time, but we'll start with Dave, and then we'll go down the panel. What are the hottest sectors in security right now? Dave.
All right, so can I have 10 this time? I'll
Oh
go
my
really
God.
fast. All right, so let's see. Here's some of the biggest ones I'm focused on. I'm focused in on, I'll start in any order, but I'll think about these as the airborne threat. So how many people understand what the airborne threat is? So this is all the airborne protocols that are essentially able to transmit data and information around and within your buildings. So why is that a problem? There's not a lot of defense for airborne threats. One of the biggest is drones that can fly around. They can do a lot of destruction, espionage, terrorism, things like that. It's a cybersecurity problem. You got to monitor frequencies in the air, and anything above your building, all the way up to space, is an airborne threat. And one of the biggest domains in the world for threats today in our society is satellite communications, RF spectrum analysis, detection, mitigation against those types of airborne protocols. That's probably one. Another one randomly is insider threats. 50+% of all the breaches in the world are coming from insiders today. And it's a major problem. Not a lot of tools or capability to track insiders now. You don't know how you're onboarding an insider. You don't know how to monitor the insider. This little thing called privacy and security is a bit of a tug of war. So it's very difficult to monitor employees or contractors. And we're seeing a major epidemic of insider threats, disgruntled employees, terrorism, all kinds of espionage related to an inside-out problem versus an outside-in problem. The world of IoT and industrial IoT, another major area that's just exploding before our eyes, literally and figuratively. And we're starting to see just high growth of devices connected to the network that are invisible or unmanaged, and they're vulnerable. The supply chains are compromised. How do we manage that? How do we mitigate against that? Are all types of issues that we're seeing. One of the biggest domains in the world right now are industrial OT networks and ICS networks. If you're paying attention to some of the biggest potential kinetic challenges related to cyber, is happening on this side. Lack of air gapping came out with NotPetya, and some of the other ransomware attacks exposed this. So one of the bigger problems we're seeing in the world is industrial. So I could go on. Is that my time limit?
I think that was pretty good. Ben.
Well, I'm a big believer that whenever there's one thing that changes, it actually creates ripples, and these ripples require cybersecurity. So if I had to pick one, would probably be the cryptocurrency that seems to be picking up again now. So I think we should watch out for that and implications of what will happen with that.
I'll probably add on a couple to what Dave and Ben mentioned here. One of the areas that there have been a lot of innovation over the years, but there is still need for more innovation, need for a better way to do this is essentially application security. If you look at the traditional security domains, network security, cloud security, endpoint security, etc., they don't essentially give customers the visibility to what's happening at the layer 7 level, closer to the application, who's talking to whom, how do we really control the processes, the data, and this could be across the pane, right? Whether it's IT, OT, all of that put together. It's an incredibly complex space. There is potential for a ton of innovation in that space, so that's a very important space for more continued innovation. And then the second piece I would mention is IT, OT coming togetherness. However you want to call that, IT, OT overlap. A lot of times we've all essentially said that OT is a different buyer, different universe. They don't understand as much as the IT guys. It's not necessarily true. It's just that the problems are different. How do you bring all of those pieces together so that you make those problems one and solve it together so there is coordination, better coordination between IT and OT? I totally see that as a very important market for us to conquer over the next several years.
Thank you. Renee?
So I'm going to echo the ITOT. I'll also say that I think APIs are incredibly important to think about. But I want to tell you about the sad story of the CISO. When you're a CISO, you really want to do all these cool things, ITOT, API security. But if you have a crappy password program, the users, they can't get over themselves. All they see when they see you is you're preventing me from doing my job. You're the one that's making me do all these downloads. You're the one doing X, Y, Z. I can barely get my job done because you, security queen, are in the way. So for me, what I'm thinking about right now is frictionless security, and it's how to make my end users happy. So I was at a conference. I've been thinking about this a lot since RSA. And I was at a meeting in New York a couple weeks ago, and I talked about this. And 10 people came up with product and said, we can help you, we can help you, we can help you. So I think other people are thinking about it too.
Great. Adam?
So I bucket things into two categories: the sort of how do we work better and the really new and evolution side. In identity, I think that kind of crosses both sides. I think there's a lot of great stuff that's coming out in identity right now that will really help organizations work better and push forward. I think in vuln management and just general process management and helping to be more efficient or to automate everything from hunt all the way into kind of vuln tracking and process. I think that there's some good stuff that's really happening in that space. And then I generally like anything that follows the trend of where enterprises are going. Big, old, slow enterprises need help. So anything that allows me to do vuln scanning in the cloud where I have destructible infrastructure, anything like Twistlock, for instance, that helps me follow where my technology organizations are going, that's pretty hot to me because that helps me kind of stay up with the business and the trends of what's happening.
Walmart just endorsed you, so nice work.
Too late.
Palo Alto, right? Can't talk about. So I'm surprised a couple of things that were actually not talked about. So just going a little bit higher level and even more simplistic level. One is protection and defense, and within protection and defense, some of the things that we didn't talk about is access and network. And it's interesting that for the past like 10, 15 years, the network has been pretty much ignored for a really long time because you're kind of addressing it through either endpoint protection or let the threat come in and insider protection and so forth. And Dave, you talked about that a little bit. But now we do have technology available that can actually scan it. So there is a bunch of opportunities in and around that. So similarly with code and what's happening. But all of that is on the protection side. But the other side that's less so from enterprise perspective, but it's from the product development standpoint, is security built in. I do think increasingly as new products are starting to built in, not just in IoT and ITOT combination, but across the board in every software that's being developed, with a bunch of folks outside of this room as well, I got to start thinking about security built in, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of that, and especially as we think about a lot more forward-looking.
Great. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about overhyped areas. What are some areas that you think are just, you're just sick and tired of hearing of because it's just there's no real substance there, it's overhyped, it's too much, it's not as big as it sounds.
Start with the CISOs on that.
Yeah, CISOs, please. Yeah.
They know for real.
Oh, I get to go first. Okay, I'll just fire it out there. Blockchain, everything. Blockchain's a technology looking for a solution, and don't get me wrong, there's so much capital deployed against blockchain solutions. Somebody will get it right. Like there will be a use for it. It will go mainstream because there's so much effort and capital deployed in that market. But too many people are leading out with pitches right now that say, hey, we have a blockchain solution for XYZ. And I'm like, no, give me your solution. I don't care if it's blockchain. I don't care what's underneath it. But unfortunately, it's always, hey, I have a blockchain thing for this thing. That's the number one overhyped that I see right now.
I was going to say that, but then I started talking to people at this conference that compelled me to think that actually I shouldn't say that. But I don't think it's overhyped, but I think it's overused, and it's the term SOAR. And if I see the SOAR, I see vendors that can't talk about what their product does, but they somehow say that they can orchestrate and automate. And I ask them how, and they can't tell me, but they can sure as heck use SOAR any chance they can in their pitch.
Great. Dave, it's your turn.
Yeah, here's how I look at it, for whatever it's worth. Been fortunate to be in 20 years. I kind of look at it this way. If you can find evil and solve a threat, you're going to be a really hyped company. And everything else is overhyped, in my opinion. 80% of the security spends and the capitalization on the biggest companies Dino showed were all ones who solved cancer. They solved a threat. They resolved some major issue that happened in the world. I was fortunate with FireEye. I had a period of time. CrowdStrike's doing a great job with that. If you look at the best companies, they solve a threat. So what I encourage everybody to do is, can you find evil? Can you help the CISOs solve a major problem? And if you can do that at scale around the world, you have an amazing company. And if you're not, you're probably in the 20% of cyber spend that's something like emulate evil, measure risk, do compliance, save cost. That's a small bucket. The big bucket, the 80%, are the ones who solve evil. Find evil, detect evil, mitigate evil. That's the way I look at it.
Karthik.
So if I have to pick one overhyped segment or sector, it is .ai. It's only $45 on GoDaddy.com. So everybody that I come across these days is a .ai company. Perhaps they are doing some pattern matching, some kind of statistical analysis, some kind of analytics. For me, AI is not, I don't even know if AI is that relevant in the security framework, because AI starts to become meaningful when there is predictive analytics. You can actually predict the future. That's what is AI as it is defined to be. You can essentially figure out how there is a feedback loop, whether it is supervised, unsupervised. I've always followed the simple rule that AI companies that have a cost of error that is very high is not necessarily a good place to invest time or resources or money. Cost of, may call me conservative, but cost of error, death. It's not necessarily good. In the security world, if you're using AI that creates a lot of false positives, that doesn't do much in terms of improving on what Dave talked about, people are just going to shut it off. So calling to Adam's point earlier, if you are a blockchain AI analytics in the cloud but has a mobile angle, perhaps talk to me. I will.
That can do SOAR.
That can do SOAR. Then you will probably find a lot of investors lining outside your door.
That was great. Anyone else overhype? Nitin.
Kind of partially building on Karthik and partially the first disagreement on the panel. Let's talk about that a little bit. So while I agree with your overall premise that AI is really hype, but let's kind of take it a simpler way. First, the way Adam actually described blockchain, so I would actually describe AI and actually take the term AI out of it, or maybe just call it automated intelligence, where it says artificial intelligence a little bit. But the use of data science, it's like if you're starting a company in 2018, 2019, and you're not leveraging some level of data science into your technology, probably should. It's like the most, it's kind of off the shelf a little bit. So leverage the technology, don't sell it as AI. I think that's the point they were trying to make. So maybe I'm not disagreeing, but so that element is overhyped, but that as an enabling technology underneath, whether you're doing network application, whatever the case might be, it's helpful.
Okay, Ben, overhyped?
Maybe regarding AI, just kind of share a story. We had a competitor and they were in stealth mode for 2.5 years. Now it's a horrible experience having like a competitor, and the guy that's running it has like a first degree from Harvard and a PhD from Stanford. And every pitch he started with, well, when Obama, my friend, called me and told me, could you come help me at the White House? I told him blah, blah. And that was just like impossible to run against. And he said he has this like amazing AI agent, but he can't show it because it's in stealth mode. it was such a destructive experience, like trying to raise in Sand Hill, telling people like, you know, being like an Israeli apish guy, like, whoo, 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 I came from a secret army unit, blah, blah, blah. And then like that guy waltzing in, taking all their money. It was a horrible experience. Anyway, that's sort of, I'll tell it to a psychologist at some point. But I'm telling you of you because they had like this special AI sauce, which was impossible to deal with because like we didn't build a special AI sauce that way. We added an AI on the top of some heuristics that sort of showed up some results, and to clear out these results in all kind of corner cases, we used AI, but we didn't kind of create an AI that will just show you all kind of bad things but couldn't explain to you why. It's just like the AI said, this is weird, you go figure that one out. But in reality, what happened was that in almost all cases where we ended up running against them, they were already kicked out just because of that, because their fancy AI just gave all kind of random results they couldn't quite explain. So, I don't know, our very practical thing from that was that it's better to start with heuristics and then clean up the results of heuristics using AI rather than the other way around.
That's great. Great.
He wins the award for using animal sounds while answering a question. That was a monkey, right?
Underhyped.
Yeah, okay.
That was an Israeli.
So actually, let's stay with Ben for a little bit. Why don't we? Ben, how you feeling?
I said I'm excited sitting next to Dave, but I'm good. All is well.
I'm also quite excited sitting next to Dave, so we share that.
I've been acquired 4 times, Ben, so yeah.
No,
Fun experience.
So Ben, 4 years ago, you came into my office and you said, I'm going to do container security. And I said, what? So how did you decide to bet on container security 4 years ago when there were no containers?
So I'll be very frank, just for the purpose of other people like me, kind of public school guys trying to figure it out. Yoav, that's not exactly what happened. That was the 3rd time I came to your office, just to be frank. the first time was like, I had this amazing idea about like mistake prevention thing. It was like, let's prevent mistakes. Human beings make mistake, we'll prevent it. And it was just like, Ben, go away. And then I said like, you know, actually, Yoav, it's a different thing. Like DLP is broken. Like people spend all that money into DLP and it's like, Ben, go away. And then like the 3rd time we came out with the containers, but we tried to learn from time to time. So I had this theory at the time, which I still stick to it, and I think it can generate a lot of good security ideas. So Gartner actually had this thing called a hype cycle. So it basically shows that a lot of ideas start kind of flat out, then they become like extremely popular, too popular, and then they kind of break down, and then over time they pick up. So whenever I tried to pitch an idea that was already done and it's picking up like DLP, like no one would listen to me. Like they would completely flat out just not listen to me. So I figure out that whole bucket of ideas like is out, just it's not interesting. I figured out, the only thing I really wanted is just to give me someone who'd give me a chance, because we thought we could run a pretty good company just, you know, because we thought we were good guys. But we just needed a chance. So we thought about ideas that would actually get funded, because like I said, we just wanted to make shitload of money. That was our idea. And we said we have to do all kind of stuff to do that, like sell, get product and all that. But we can deal with that, but we just need to start from somewhere. Sorry, it's going to be a long answer. What happened was that these ideas were out. And then we started pitching stuff like we said, well, the DLP will be in the cloud, because CASB was like super hot these days. And whenever we pitched it, people said like, yeah, this is amazing, because they already invested in CASB, and they were just, you know, people would say, that's a great idea. No one would invest, which was horrible. And I couldn't figure out like, why wouldn't they invest? And then I figured out, if it's already in the top of the hype, it's a great idea, but someone else already thought about it. And since I'm a first-time entrepreneur, no one would really allow me to do anything with that. So I had this amazing idea, which is I need to get just before the hype, which is like not a really good idea, because like obviously everyone wants to get there. So how do you get to the idea, which will be very hot in like 6 months? But right now it's just picking up. And I'll tell you how. We came out with the containers security, which evolved into DevOps, cloud native, and all that good stuff. But basically, I figured out that in cybersecurity, you don't need to be innovative. You just need to stand next to a guy who's innovative and say the word security after he said that. He said, like, IoT, you say security. And then, like, oh, that's a good idea. You said drones, security, great, that's the thing. So anything that would work, but you have to be careful because, like, it actually needs to be something that's actually picking out right now, not something that would pick up in 4 years. Like, you can't say VR security. No, that doesn't work. Wearable devices security. No, it's already done. I mean, like, you have to pick the right thing. So I remember we were sitting in a place called Giraffe in Herzliya, and Dima said, hey, maybe we should go with containers. And I said, like, what is it? He said, well, it's like a VM, but it's smaller. And I said, like, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard, Dima. And then anyway, he said, like, Ben, we should really look at it. It's right, kind of picking up, and like the last POCs that we've done for all your stupid DLP ideas and all that, they were based on containers. So we should really look into that because it's speaking. And then we built this whole theory around it, started presenting it to VCs, and we actually started getting traction. So that's the long, real, unfortunately, story of how we came to your office. And then we knocked on the door, and luckily you got it from day one, which was actually pretty surprising because no VC got it.
I think Offer got it from day one. I got it from day 3.
That's true, actually. But actually no VC at that time in Israel quite got it. Like, it was a pretty hot topic in the Bay Area. People in Israel didn't quite know what it was except of the developers. And generally speaking, anything that developers really like means that someone else would like it later. Like, it was always like, VMs, nah, that's for developers. Cloud, nah, that's for developers. Containers, nah, that's for developers. So anything that someone tells you, nah, that's developers, that's a good place to start. Anyway.
Ben, thank you for that. Thank you. Now there you go. From the heart, guys. This guy always from the heart. All right, let's start on the far end of the panel this time. Nitin, you get to answer first. So you're here in Israel. Can you tell us why you come here? I mean, you've also co-sponsored this event. I mean, you're investing. Why are you here and in Israel? And can you provide some advice to Israeli entrepreneurs?
Don't do what American companies do. That's not the good advice. First part of the question, it's that why I'm here. It's the quality and quantity, and let's start with the real why is the quality. Even though there's a lot of quantity and a lot of companies here, but if you're a security investor, I mean, this is kind of the ground zero now. I think there are more security startups starting in Israel than any other region. And when I say region, I'm sure across U.S. it's probably a little bit more, but any particular region, like whether it's a tri-state DC area or California or what have you. So, and the quality of the companies just continues to be really high. And there's something really interesting also happening, because for the longest time it used to be just cyber startups that were exciting out of Israel. But now you actually see a lot of, you mentioned DevOps, but just generally sort of cloud native technologies, data technologies. And I've always thought that it's the intersection of the three where the companies actually start to get really interesting. And they're kind of thinking about really future-looking stuff. So, and Israel is starting to actually have this real interesting intersection of technology companies created across the board, which is kind of creating, I think, probably a better next generation of security startups. In terms of what the Israeli companies should do compared to kind of the U.S. companies and what they've historically done, it's I think it's kind of a known fact that in the go-to-market side, they tend to be a little bit weaker to start with. But I would actually kind of counter that a little bit. Initially, they're a lot more disciplined. I love that Israeli startups invariably, even at a very early stage when you meet with them, they've actually validated the technology with the end customers, whether the end customers are here in Israeli environments or in the US environments. I mean, that's huge. It's like kind of learning a lot directly from customers. Now, some of my experience might be anecdotal. You see a lot more than I do in early stages, Yoav, but that anecdotal evidence is going to continue to tell me that they're actually validating a lot of the technology compared to some of the American counterparts. So, that's what they should continue to do.
That's great. Anyone else on the panel about that? Adam.
I just come to Tel Aviv to hang out with everybody from California. There's 4 of us on the panel that all live pretty close to each other, but yet we meet here. So I see him for breakfast. I haven't seen you in a while, actually. You're way out in like Danville or something. So we can go to like Yo on Hearts for dinner or something. But I come here to say y'all. No, and I'm going to a wedding this week in Tel Aviv, so there's that. No, I like the Israeli ecosystem because I like how companies operate here. And frankly, I like the way of doing business here. Everyone is a little bit more brash. Everyone will tell me exactly what they think of my nonsense opinions. And frankly, I sort of appreciate that because it improves me. So I've been here a week already working with Team 8, and now I'm here working with this group. And we get to see a lot of innovative ideas, and we get to see a lot of people that are pushing and are relentless and are looking for that next opportunity. And it just happens to be an ecosystem that I feel comfortable working in and doing business within. So it's always good to be here.
Great. Any advice though for Israeli entrepreneurs? Like what do they do really bad that you'd want to fix or do different?
They tell me I'm wrong too much now. No, I think I don't know. I think there's a great group of entrepreneurs here. I think the one thing I would say that's different about the ecosystem is there's really aggressive valuations and really aggressive kind of swagger, if you will, with some of the companies. And when you're doing business in the U.S., that can rub a lot of people the wrong way. So it has to be managed correctly.
Great. So, and just before we go to you, Renee, I just want to mention that we will have audience questions. Right after this question, we're going to see if anybody in the audience has any questions for the panelists. So think of questions. Renee.
So my son was studying in Jerusalem, but he graduated and came back to the States last week, so that's not it. But I've been to Israel before, and I've been to Tel Aviv. I was at Cybertech about 18 months ago, and I really enjoyed it. I mentioned that I'm an early adopter, so I came over because I'm looking for solutions and ideas to help with the IT and the OT space. I also want to make sure that when I get back that I keep my own team on their toes so that I can maybe throw things out there that maybe they need to be considering as well. And then the tip that I would have, I was an early adopter at a very big company, and the procurement people, came in for a meeting, and the founder sat down, and he was explaining the product, and the procurement people said, "Who's your competition?" And he looked at them and he said, "Do nothing." And the procurement guy started writing it down, "Do nothing." And he was so mad. So I think there was a little bit of arrogance, but I don't think that Israeli companies necessarily have the corner market on that. I think that they're Americans that do the same thing. But I'm just saying that that's probably not a line you should use with procurement.
Karthik?
I think I come to Israel every year for the same reasons that others on the panel shared here. The one piece of advice I would give that probably applies to every entrepreneur, not just Israeli entrepreneurs here, is when you're validating your product, especially before or just after you go to Yoav for your early investment, a lot of times the first thing you do is, this is my idea, this is my capabilities, I'm going to go test it out with my 5 or 6 different friends as potential customers. Will they be buying this? You should definitely do that, but try to also go to people that you don't know. Because your friends are always going to take your call and say, yes, I'll give you a POC, but when you turn around and ask them to pay for it, they may or may not actually pay. So validating with your friends is not sufficient product market fit for you to go and drive a company.
Okay, guys, write this down. This is so true. Your friends are not going to validate your business, all right? You got to go talk to a CISO that you've never met before, pitch them on the idea, and see if they're going to POC your product. Don't listen to your friends too much. That's a great point. Thank you. Ben?
I have a story about that, just because it's about when I tried to raise money from, I'll say the name, Menlo Ventures, who's told me no amongst the others. So they told me, hey, don't, whatever you do, don't install in Bank Leumi. Like, you can install in Bank Leumi, but we know they're Israelis and we don't count them as a beta customer anyway, so don't even do that. So apparently, try and find US companies to install in. We've always tried to do that because apparently when you go to the US to raise money, if you install at 6 different Israeli companies, that's not, no one counts that, so just so that you know.
Dave?
What do I love about Israel?
And some feedback.
Okay. Is this the coolest fucking place in the world, like Tel Aviv? I mean, you have the smartest people, you have the coolest people, you have the most hungriest people. It's a security, safety conscious environment and culture. Everybody loves to party here, and you have beaches here. Okay, what's not to like about all that, right?
Valuations.
So, got that going. No, I mean, this is an amazing place. I'm in love with Israel. I've been coming here 20 years. It's just an incredible place to watch grow and innovate. And, Nitin said it, it's ground zero. But I can tell you the one thing that I watched the Israeli ecosystem fail at. Hope you're listening. I see the greatest innovation come out of here, and I see all this energy get put into the product. But where is the equal amount of energy into the go-to-market strategy of the product? So I said this last year with Yoav, it's a game of inches on intellectual property, but a game of miles on a go-to-market. So whoever designs as equally of innovative go-to-market strategy is the ones who win. If you look up there, 45 companies in the last 18 months raised $100 million in a single round. You think they're winning? So you get a very short period of time to execute your intellectual property. You have to execute a go-to-market strategy equally as fast and equally as innovative. So what I try to teach every company I'm with, what are we doing to create a syndicate of partners, investors, customers that can create leverage for you when you go to market? I tell the story of Clarity. What did we do? We raised capital from Rockwell, Siemens, Airbus, Schneider. And what did we do? We leveraged all those go-to-market platforms to accelerate the company. The drone company that I'm a part of, we raised capital from Harris, who operates all the airports. We raised capital from Macquarie, who basically does all the airports too. The military, Department of Defense, and they create leverage for you. So as you're thinking about growing a company, put as much effort into the go-to-market as you're putting into the product. That's usually the winners.
Thank you very much, Dave. So we have time for, thank you. We have time for a couple questions. Does anybody right there?
Hi, guys. So Dino was giving a nice overview of the cyber market, and you guys were talking about overhyped and underhyped things. One thing I'm missing, and I don't think is addressed enough, and I'd like to hear your opinion on, is the time to detection. It's been known for a long time that it's up to 270 days for something to get detected. And only this week we've heard about NASA, where Raspberry Pi took 10 months to detect. Where do you think we're going in that? Because there's a lot of new stuff going on, but this is an old problem.
Who wants to answer?
So I think it's an old problem, but the solution is fairly old as well with it. There's companies out there that mean time to detection is very, very fast and very rapid. Most companies, it's an underinvestment in that capability, whether that's technology, people, prioritization, whatever it is. But I know companies out there that are catching attacks, breaches, whatever, exceptionally fast, and they prioritize that side of the business more than anything else. So while I think there's some technology that can probably help with that, I don't think it's a revolutionary area for tech. It's more of, hey, let's invest, put the right people and process in place, and we can get that down.
I usually walk into boards. I get a chance to speak to public boards all over the world, and I draw one little diagram, and I say, can you do this test? And maybe this is the biggest companies in the world. On one axis is how fast can you respond to a patch? And of course, why does that matter? Because if there's an active evasion or exploit on that vulnerability, you better be able to patch quick and be able to patch the entire enterprise. So how fast can you patch this way? On the other axis, how fast can you detect and respond to an IOC? And those who are in the upper right-hand corner, bad, right? You can't patch fast, you can't respond fast. If you're in the lower left-hand corner and you're in hours, maybe even short days to respond to patches and IOCs, you're in best of class. So you challenge boards, you challenge companies to how fast you can respond to both patches and IOCs, and that usually puts you best of class.
If I could actually build on what Adam said, I'm not sure if there is going to be one technology tomorrow all of a sudden that comes out and say, from tomorrow, the time to detection is 20 seconds, right? It's not a magic bullet new solution that's going to help us get there. It's almost like today, the problem is you have 4 doors in your house, you're trying to protect each one of them individually, but then they're not talking to each other. Either it's because there is a lack of people, lack of resources, lack of coordination amongst all of those. So the best way to bring all of the time to detection down is to have a better coordination amongst all of the spend that you're already making in your enterprise, right? So if, the CISOs here will probably have more better stories than me to speak about this, but if there is a solution that takes advantage of existing spend and makes it easier for folks to manage, to bring out the goods and the bads, that probably will be helpful in bringing down that time to detection.
Two last questions. Over there.
Hi. So Sandeep here. I work for BNP Paribas in London. So my question is, as a client, I see a lot of security products that add on to my IT stack. And when you start looking at the number of products that I need to add on my IT stack, the list goes up, and more than half of them from a cybersecurity perspective end up becoming nice-have and not must-have. So my question essentially is, how can you actually simplify computing or IT rather than keep adding products on top of all those operating system and applications, which is becoming like a huge exercise because it's a never-ending game. You know, you try to fix one problem, second problem, third problem, and if you try to look into a chair of a CISO, the budget is limited. So how much you are realistically going to do in terms of solving problem? So my question is, what's with computing? What can we do fundamentally to solve computing as an issue?
Yeah, who wants to take that?
Well, the only comment is that I don't call it the security stack anymore. I call it the security pile, and it's really smelly. And so I can tell you that I'm on a mission to simplify, because I think that if you don't, then you have a big problem. That doesn't mean buying everything from one vendor, okay? That's what it doesn't mean. But it does mean that you look across, you know, what your situation is. You look at how effectively you're even deploying a product, because you might have two products that in theory can do the same thing, but you're not using either one of them well or even to their best capability. So I'm on a real mission right now to simplify, and I'm looking at capabilities. I'm also looking at where I'm gapped, and I'm saying, okay, you know, if I don't have OT things in place and I need to get them, then I better get rid of something to pay for that. So I can just tell you that people have to be ruthless about how they leverage their products in their environments and what the problems are that they're trying to solve, and go after that.
Yeah, so I think we're in one of the most interesting times in InfoSec and technology that we've ever been. We're in a time where we're seeing platforms actually take responsible for security. I actually put this back at Apple. Apple was really kind of one of the first companies to say, hey, we produce a device, the iPhone. We're going to own the security stack end to end on this. Now, are they perfect? No, because nobody is. But they were one of the first ones to really say, hey, we're going to take this approach. Now you look at what Microsoft's doing with Azure, you look at other companies that are building platforms, and they're saying, hey, we're going to build security into the fabric. So the vast majority of the companies out there, not necessarily the largest companies, but the vast majority of companies out there, move to one of the platforms, like leverage the platform overall, and you will inherently get a better set of capabilities and features, and you'll reduce that stacking capability or that stacking scenario that you're in. For the rest of us, where that's just not always feasible, the approach that I'm looking at, much like Renee is looking at as well, I'm adding one other angle to that. I'm bringing engineering back to security. I'm saying, hey, you know, the hot marketing term right now in AppSec for this is shift left, right? Get back into the dev cycle. I'm looking at how can we build security into the fabric of our operations, whether that's a process, that's technology, whatever it is, so that I can stop bolting things on that were not designed to be actually in that workflow. It's not going to be perfect. I'm never going to fully get there. My DLP, my other things, whatever they are, they're always going to sit on top. But we're looking for every capability, every process improvement, every platform play that we can, where everything is built seamlessly or as close as possible into the fabric, engineering what we can after that, and then stacking after that as a third option.
That's great. And we'll do one last question, and then we're done. It's you over there. Need mics?
Hi, my name is Terence. I'm from Singapore. So my question is basically, whatever we have covered here is all on prevention. So my question is actually, what's the biggest threat that you guys see in post-threat? So for example, you have been compromised. So what do you guys see as the biggest threat to an organization that has been compromised?
Yes. So so you're asking what do we have to offer to organizations that are being compromised, right? In the sense of protection versus just detection, right? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, from the curing process.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of other people here who would probably answer that better, but it's like an old question of what can you do when you're being compromised and whether you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? What's the point in actually protecting versus just detecting? From my limited experience, I've found out that actually different cultures behave differently. There are some cultures where whenever you detect something, they would just like you to completely block it. It doesn't matter if it's the tip of the iceberg, like it should be gone. There are other cases where no one wants to come, on Sunday to figure out it was like a false positive. And so they'd rather get all the information, acquire all the post-mortem stuff, and make a decision offline almost, because most likely they're trying to protect against advanced persistent threat, things that if they actually exist, it doesn't matter that much whether you block it or not. Coming from a military background, I think that, like all Israelis, at the end of the day, if someone's doing advanced persistent threat against you, probably the protection is not what's going to save you. So my personal take on it is that you should have really strong detection capabilities. Having said that, at Twistlock, we were always, we're too poor to have too many opinions. So we were always decided that we'll allow protection too, and some customers use it. The flip side of it is that, if you mess up, I almost used a different word. If you mess up, then they might throw away your product. So that's a hard thing to do.
So actually, a CISO once actually mentioned that to me. That actually kind of defines that. It's that security is and CISO is one job function, and security is kind of one category where the victim gets called to the principal's office. And what I mean by that is, once a company gets hacked and they are breached, then if the information goes to the public domain, then Congress in the US would actually call the CISO and the board and the CEOs and so forth in order to testify. And whether you could argue whether their users were victims or they're victims or not, but they were definitely not the perpetrators. Whereas in pretty much every other area, it's the perpetrators that actually get called for questioning and all that sort of stuff. So, the only way to kind of get past that is actually having a plan ahead of time. So, I'm a big believer, and it's really hard to do, but big believer of almost like it's almost equivalent of disaster recovery plan, but it's almost a paper plan. Like if you're breached, if you're in the process of being breached, like when do you actually tell your stakeholders, and in what process do you have the stakeholders being told in? And whether that means that, and stakeholders could include your, actual shareholders of the company, but your board, the CEO, maybe even the customers and so forth. But having a plan ahead of time is, in a stressful situation, and kind of going back to Ben, what you talked about it, which is, it's like, what does a military organization do? It's that if you're being attacked, there's a plan, there's a contingency plan already in place. Now, it's really hard to execute, but increasingly, I think more and more organizations are starting to go in that direction, and I think 100% of the organizations need to go in that direction.
Maybe I could wrap things up just real quickly, and I just want to say thank you to Yoav and the YL Venture team. Can you guys give them a big round of applause, please? Awesome. Not done. This guy does an amazing job. Thank you for all the investments you do in these great companies, and thanks for being an unbelievable leader in the community. And I love watching all the posts you guys do. The YL team does a great job, and thank you for all the other panelists here. And I'll hand it back.
And I want to do some more thank yous. So I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank Evolution and Shasta and Momentum Cyber for buying all you guys beers and food alongside ourselves. And I definitely want to thank Sharon and Dana and Guy for producing this event for you. Thank you very much.